Hey, I made this for you. We're going to talk about the difference between thinking, saying, and doing. We're going to talk about clarity, and at the end, we're going to go down a fancy little rabbit hole, which I think you'll enjoy. Check this out. Let's, for the purpose of this video, say that the thinking is intellectual, the saying is emotional, and the doing is action, which is a combination of how I think and feel and say and communicate. I think that I love my parents. I tell them I love them, but I want to change them. Now, what does that then reflect? Do I truly love them, or do I just think I love them and I say I love them, but I love you, but why do you do it like this? Why are you living your life like that? Why don't you change this? Why don't you become this? Why don't you do this? Resonate with this? Maybe you think you love your parents, but you can't even tell them you love them. Are you struggling to communicate and say, I love you, mom, I love you, dad, thank you? Have you ever showed gratitude to your parents? Is it thank you for just who you are, not what you're doing? The action is also a struggle then, because if you think you love your parents, but you can't even tell them, what are you actually showing them? I love my partner, kids, dog, animals. I tell them, oh, I love you, buddy, I love you, kids, I love you, partner. But maybe I'm cheating on my partner. Maybe I beat my dog and I talk negatively to my kids. So what does that show then? Obviously, some of these things can be a self-love issue, and we'll go down that rabbit hole very shortly. Now, this is what it comes down to when we say that action speaks louder than words. So we have to understand that there is an incongruency, there's a conflict between what I'm thinking, how I'm feeling, and what I'm doing, the action. If there's a conflict, you will be struggling in your life because we're saying one thing and we're doing something completely different. How about I think I love myself, I say I love myself, but I'm actually fucking myself up left, right, and center. The key, this is a key clearly, the key are your feelings. If you feel strong and you think you're strong, you don't have to stand in the mirror and say, I'm strong. Because obviously the reason you have to say it is because somewhere you don't actually believe it. You don't feel like you're strong. But try it as a test. Go into the mirror and say, do the action, I love you. Tell yourself that you love you in the mirror. Can you say it, or are you struggling? Where do these actions then come from? Well, if the key are our feelings, and the way you feel affects how you think. What you think affects what you say. What you say affects your actions. Your actions will lead to your experiences, and your experiences would lead to your emotions. So around that loop we go, from your emotions, then we go back to what we're thinking. So if you at any stage feel like there's an incongruency, there's a conflict between what I'm thinking and saying and doing, because sometimes I feel certain things, but I can't even express them, and I certainly don't do them because I keep wanting to change my parents, or I keep wanting to change my partners, but I tell them that I love them. Then do I actually love them, or do I love the idea of them? Do I want them to be something that fits into my view, and therefore I want to change them into what that view is? Then it means that I don't love them. I actually just love an idea of them that I want to change them into. True love, obviously, would have to be unconditional. When it comes down to, I love you for who you are. Most people use love as in I love you because you make me feel good, right? I love you because of the way you make me feel. If you don't make me feel like that anymore, I'm gonna stop loving you. That's a condition, and that's not true love. That just means that I love the way they make them feel, but if you want to go out into the world and experience new things that makes me feel insecure, I don't love you anymore. If my wife said that I want to go on my own and do this thing, I would say, please go ahead, I love you, you should do that, that's your experience that you're entitled to because I love you. I don't love you because you're here with me right now, and I would 100% support that. That is love, in a sense, for me to my wife. Now, there's a difference between who we think we are, who we say we are, what we show that we are, and what people say that we are. What you would like is as much congruency as possible in all four areas. so that I can think in my head that I'm a certain thing or a certain person, who I am, and I can say that clearly and confidently. I also show that I am that kind of a person, and people would agree that I am that sort of person. So let's say I think I'm kind, I can say I'm kind, I show in my actions that I am kind, and people would say Conan is kind. I would think that I am worthy of things, stuff, love, life. I would say that I'm worthy. I would show that I'm worthy by my actions, not fucking myself up, not screwing up my life. People would say that Conan has high self-worth based on his actions, right? How about if I say that I love myself, I think I love myself, I say that I love myself, but by my actions I actually show that I don't love myself because I keep fucking myself up. And then people say, it doesn't seem like he loves himself because he's very angry, he's very hostile, he's very short, he's not accommodating, he's not open. So then there's a congruency, we have a conflict here. If I think that I'm not worthy based on some trauma in the past, and I say that I am worthy, but my actions, just like up here, show that I'm not worthy, then there's an incongruency again. If we are at peace with oneself, we are rational, we're stimulating, and we've got a heightened parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest. We can also be in fight and flight, activating the sympathetic nervous system, which is very much necessary for survival, but people in that state act very irrational. If you ever say, I don't understand something, someone, I don't understand how someone could possibly do that, I don't understand this, I don't understand that, not understand math, but if you don't feel like you understand a certain event or a certain person, we're lacking empathy. The key to connecting with family members or with partners or at work would be to have empathy, to be able to understand other people. So when people have an incongruency, there's something lacking, it's not a congruent idea between the intellectual, the emotional, and the action, we can suggest that they might be irrational, that they are in a state of fight and flight. So they're activating the sympathetic nervous system. This is a perfect way of then understanding why people are struggling. When someone is struggling, maybe you ask someone a question and they completely blew out, they're acting irrational, they felt attacked. You're going, hey, you're being completely irrational, I just asked you a question, now you get shitty based on their response. And so obviously we realize now, if you get shitty based on someone else's response, that's also irrational, because maybe you are not, me, I am not at peace within. So then I'll take up my rationality, I'm not in a state of rest and digest, so I come out of my parasympathetic nervous system, I activate my sympathetic nervous system, I go into fight and flight because you're being fucking irrational, now I'm acting irrational, so you triggered me to become irrational, but you also got triggered by something else to become irrational. So now we're sitting in the same boat, doing the same thing that was triggered by the same thing. So now we're sitting in the same boat, doing the same thing that was triggered by the same thing. Now we can start having empathy, because in fact, you now start to understand exactly what the other person went through to get there. If we then understand that the incongruency here comes from our feelings, which leads to our thoughts, which leads to what we say, and our actions, which will lead to our experience and our emotions, if we start feeling different and thinking differently, then those two combined will act and change and improve what we say, it will improve our actions, it will improve our experiences, and that will then spiral into control to improve our emotions, which will then keep going in this upward potential spiral that will just gravitate towards well-being. And then we can actually come into peace within. When you have peace within, you don't have to fight for everything. You don't have to struggle. We can actually come to peace and then understand that we have a choice. We can upgrade, but we don't have to. You are at peace. When you're at peace, you have empathy for other people, And that is ultimately the best way of being able to affect anyone's congruency. We have to understand why they're not rational, why they're struggling, why they're saying one thing and why they're doing another thing. I hope this helps in clearing out why you might be struggling with yourself or with a family member or in any relationship, whether that's family, friendship, or intimate. This is the key. If there's a conflict, we are going to struggle with that, and we need to resolve the perceived conflict so that we can think in congruency with what we say, in congruency with what we do. When this is all on the same plane, then we are clear and we can communicate that accordingly.